What's going on, fellas? It's your boy Gsluke here with a DFS core plays video for the Worldwide Technologies Championship at Mayakoba. Just gonna call it the Mayakoba Classic, a little bit easier to say there for the rest of the video, but in either circumstance, going to touch on my top 6 GPP plays of the week that I'll be building around in my lineups to give you an idea of some of the top plays, right? Not necessarily the chalk. I'm considering ownership for this video, whether players are a solid course fit, the recent form stands out, they're just somebody that's underrated based on their pedigree. These 6 players are guys that you might, at the very least, want to keep in consideration for this week. I'm not telling you have to play them, but I'm going to make a pretty damn good argument for doing so. And with this field, we've got ourselves some legit names for once. I mean, the Bermuda was a tough scene, let's be honest, right? I mean, I was at the Live event for the entire weekend. Didn't really miss out on much from what it seems there. But this week, you've got a Scotty Scheffler, Victor Hovland, Tony Finau, right? A lot of legit top 10, top 15 players in the world. So looking forward to that, which means at the top of the board, we've got some legit decisions to be made. I mean, last week, guys like Seamus Power really stuck out to me. I mean, he was a no-brainer. Aaron Rai, I believe, of our core picks, 5 out of the 6 made the cut. I believe 3 of them finished in the top 10, so it was a solid week for us in DFS. Core picks, we're a little bit more inconsistent. We had a few home run hitters like a Austin Smotherman towards the top of the board, and then a few that flamed out too. So this week, maybe trying to increase the consistency, but hey, in terms of those top end performances, let's roll it back with what we've been doing the last few weeks. So let's stop rambling. Let's get on into this and get this thing rocking. Got the projections up, and why don't we get started with a look at the key stats. So El Camaleon, the venue for this week, a shorter track, just over 7,000 yards, but a little bit different than Port Royal. So last week, it was a lot more about the putting than anything. This week, off the tee accuracy is key. It's extremely tight off the tee. The fairways are ribbons out there. Now, the rough isn't all that penal, but you've got plenty of jungles, wooded areas, also coastal areas where you can get into some trouble. And you've got to make sure that you're keeping it in play off the tee, because from fairway in, it's one of the more simple courses that you have. In terms of your greens, they're receptive, they're large, they also don't have much undulation to them, which means you have a birdie look pretty much any time you're on the green surface. And on top of that, the greens are running slow, right around a 10 on the stimp meter. So even when you miss a green or you have a little bit of a tough downhill putt, they aren't as tough at this sort of track, as they're not going to roll out 4 or 5 feet past the hole. So you're going to see low scores around this track, but if you're going to get offline, the players that are going to take themselves out of contention or miss the cut are those that can't keep it in play, that are hitting into the jungles, the marshes, where you're taking penalty strokes and making a relatively straightforward course a little bit more difficult. So you can see accuracy is a key stat on looking at birdie or better percentage, just because we've seen winners between 20 to 23 under par is something that's always going to be important there. In terms of your approach buckets, that 50 to 125 yard range is going to be utilized a lot more this week than what we're used to seeing. Plenty of holes that are less than 400 yards, but you're looking at some mid irons, that 125 to 150 yard range too, also being pretty prominent around this venue. A few other key stats, looking at putting, but no stats on the pass palm surface. So these are pass palm greens. Typically I'm looking at Bermuda, bent, so on and so forth in terms of the stats week to week. But because we just have a small sample size on pass palm, not something that I'm considering. It's just a little bit too noisy for my liking. Players that are gaining over a stroke and a half, 2 strokes per round on pass palm, and then some of the elite putters in the field that have even had success outside of that, small sample size on pass palm are like losing 2 strokes putting. So I don't know how much we should look into it, because the only measured rounds on pass palm that even exist are at the PGA Championship at Kiawah Island. They also had pass palm greens. Obviously for a major, they're going to have shots gained metrics, but for all of the Mayakoba Championship events, Corrales, Puerto Rico Open, which a lot of players in this field have played and had success at, they haven't had the shots gained metric. So, if we were looking into those, it doesn't give you nearly the entire picture. And there's a few notable exceptions where players have had success at the non-shots gained events, where I would just use as a direct counter argument to anybody using those stats. So I wouldn't look into it too much. Just look at your typical putting stats. Comp courses, so I'm looking at Waialae, Sedgefield, and Port Royal. Talked about those in my course breakdown. There will be a video link in the description of the video to that. So if you haven't already seen my entire course breakdown and you want a better idea of the types of players I'm looking for, a full 25-minute analysis rather than the 2-3 minute Spark Notes version that I just gave you here, make sure to check that out. But I'm looking at short par 70s and par 71s. At the bottom bottom here, these are courses with paspalum greens. So Corrales for the Corrales Putacana Championship. Cocoa Beach is the Puerto Rico Open, and Vedanta Vallarta was the Mexico Open last year. All of those had paspalum greens. So you can take a look at those. Windy conditions, good drives gained, and shots gained around the green around there too. But don't want to bore you to death with course talk, right? Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page before we talk about my top plays, because you got to know why I'm going to like players before we talk about who those players are going to be. And at the top of the board, we've got Scottie Scheffler at $11,400. And at this point, he's coming in low owned. It feels like Scottie Scheffler is perpetually under owned at the beginning of the week. Now by Wednesday, a lot of times his ownership number creeps up as people adjust and realize just how underlooked he is, and, you know, kind of takes away from that sentiment, right? He'll go from right around like 11, 12% owned to maybe like 13, 14%, but he never gets to that chalk range. And though he's number 2 in the world now, right? He's not world number 1. We can't use that as our, you know, placeholder argument for why we're going to play Scottie Scheffler here. He's a perfect course fit. If you look at just pure shots gained at Mayakoba over the last 2 years, or in fact, just over any sample size at El Camaleon, Scottie Scheffler is, I believe, top 5 in the field. If not, I believe he's number 3 or number 4, to be exact, on that list. Behind Victor, who's won multiple times. You have players like an Adam Long, who's been exceptional here. Brendan Todd comes to mind. I know he's up there on that top 5 list as well. Scottie Scheffler also finds himself on that list, and that's despite not having super flashy results, right? A 4th place finish and then just an 18th place finish back there in 2020. So it's not like he's absolutely burning it up with his finishes. It's not like he's going out there and gaining 15, 16 strokes to the field like somebody like a Brendan Todd did when he went out there and won, or like Victor Hovland did over the last 2 years. He's keeping up with those players despite not having those flashy results. So that's why I think looking at shots gained metrics are some of the most important things that you can do when it comes to PGA DFS, because it gives you a more accurate representation of actually how well somebody has played at a venue. And Scottie Scheffler, an elite course fit from the shots gained perspective, but also from the logic standpoint. This is a course where off the tee matters. Like I mentioned, off the tee accuracy, probably the most important stat, and then birdie or better percentage. Birdie or better percentage, he's a top 10 player on the tour. In terms of driving accuracy, sure, he's not an elite accuracy guy, but he's not going to have to hit driver very often. This is going to be a unique circumstance. And something I've noticed, because I've seen the last 2 starts from Scheffler here, he's been widely televised, especially last year. Even back there in 2020, we got to see a lot of his shots because he made it to the weekend. He's somebody who doesn't need to hit driver. He's going to hit a lot of irons off the tee. It's going to be a lot of 3-woods off the tee. And if you saw the course breakdown, I point out where a lot of these bombers have no incentive to go out there and bomb it. And I know he's used the driver as a huge asset over his last 50 measured rounds, right? Gaining 0.7 strokes per round. But don't forget, he's also the world's best iron player. So, if, you know, he's not going to be able to leverage those 0.7 strokes per round, right? I'm sure he'll still gain off the tee because there are the par 5s where you can unleash a driver. There are 3 or 4 par 4s where it's open enough off the tee where I think some of the elite drivers, like a Scottie Scheffler, who would certainly qualify in that department, might hit a driver and try and be a little bit more aggressive. But he's still going to gain a little bit off the tee, maybe closer to like 0.3, 0.4 shots per round, just because he's not hitting driver all that often. But he's still an unbelievably good iron player. He's going to lap the field here. I know I said it's a much stronger field here, but you're still dealing with lack of depth. There's a lot of these good top-end players, but outside of the 8 and 9K range, you're dealing with guys that get a little bit hairy down there in the 7s, and he's been held back by the putter. And something else to note is, I know I said, you know, the paspalum stats, we don't want to look into them too much. Well, the only stats that we have for Scheffler on paspalum are at the PGA Championship, where he gained over 4.5 strokes putting. So, you know, if you're going to look into those stats, you're going to think that Scottie Scheffler is an absolute god on paspalum. He loves this golf course. He's got the iron play that we're looking for, birdie or better percentage that we're looking for. And, you know, the only stats we have for him on the green surfaces are his advantageous stat. Like, it's the best stat profile he has on any surface on tour. Again, it's the smallest sample size, so you got to take it with a grain of salt, but it's still the best surface that he has on tour. And when you're looking at his issues of late, it's the putting, right? He's losing 1.6 strokes per round. So if we're going to expect him to rebound there on greens that he seemingly likes or has had success on over his first 2 starts. He's a smash play at $11,400. So he's going to be a part of my player pool. I hope he stays below 15% ownership by the end of the week. I expect that to be the case, and if so, he's going to be a player and I'm getting at least 2x the field on, if not closer to like 2.5x or even 3x leverage. Next up, we've got Billy Horschel, $10,000. Billy Ho was a part of my GPP winning lineup 2 years ago at this event. So if you didn't hear about it, I should have mentioned it off the bat. I've won a GPP here. I have a lot of good vibes, and he's a perfect course fit. So when we take a look at the recent, I should say, event history, you'll see what I'm talking about, right? 33rd last year, at least made the cut for you. He didn't do anything special, but top 5 finish, top 8 finish back there, 21st in 2019. He's just consistently going out there and producing top 25 or 33rd place finish like he had last time out. And he's coming in with solid form too. When we take a look at the last 50 measured rounds, you can see he's gaining across the board, over a quarter of a stroke in every category, closer to a third of a stroke around the green, which doesn't really matter all that much this week, but the putter's been there, approach play, and the off the tee play. And if there's a course that you're going to take Billy Ho at, it's the shorter courses, right? He's a solid off the tee player, right? He's gaining over a quarter of a stroke per round, but he's not an elite level bomber. He does it more with above average accuracy and above average distance, right? He's just solid in both categories when it comes to your off the tee play, and around this venue that should pay huge dividends. So I do like Billy Horschel here. The course history is there. He has experience. He knows when to club down around El Camaleon, and also relatively low owned. So I'm going right back to him. A lot of good vibes with that GPP winning lineup, and I don't see a reason to get off of it. Next up, we've got Mav McNeely, $9,400. The sports books love McNeely this week, and that really points him out to me as one of the better plays that you can get to. Relatively low owned at just 11.2% ownership, and much like somebody like a Scotty Scheffler and a few other guys we'll talk about here, like a Grillo, he's up there in the top 5 of shots gained at El Camaleon. So you take a look at his event history, it's a little bit sneaky, right? It's at 11th, a 12th, and a 26th place finish. And you take a look at the recent form metrics, that's starting to add up too, right? He's gaining a ton with the putter, gaining off the tee. The approach play has been inconsistent, but if you go out and scrub outlier performances, which over his last 24 or last 50 measured rounds, he's had multiple events of like 5 or 6 strokes lost on approach, where he was clearly just disengaged, missed the cut by like 5 or 6 strokes. I tend to try and scrub some of the outliers out, and when you do so with McNeely, he's gaining close to half a stroke per round on approach. So he's inconsistent. Like, we can't completely throw out the negative performances. I mean, we'd have to do that for everybody, right? You can't just do it on a player-by-player basis, but you know what you're getting into when you're playing somebody like a McNeely. The reason why he loses on approach long-term are because of those blow-up performances. But you also see the upside. So if we take a look at his recent form, which this time I have separated by start, not necessarily by event, so we get a little bit of a bigger picture of what players have done over their last 7-8 starts. You can see an 18th, 12th, 10th place finish. He's trending in the right direction, because before that, he was hardly making cuts, missing cuts, and the further back you look on McNeely, the worse the form gets. I mean, towards the beginning of last season, especially during the fall swing, kind of like right now, he was asserting himself as a young up-and-coming prospect, and then cooled off. Got a lot more inconsistent. He's at least trending in the right direction, which we love to see. And again, 3 top 20 finishes in a row. I think that's being slept on here a little bit. So I like the way he's trending. He's got the elite course history I'm looking for, and I'm willing to embrace that volatility. I understand that he's going to flame out. He's going to miss plenty of cuts, but McNeely at low ownership in this sort of field has the upside to potentially win. That's reflected with his outright odds. Like I said, the sports books love him, and he's up there with guys like a Colin Morikawa when it comes to their outright odds. So, I don't want to sleep on that fact there. They seem to know what they're talking about, right? They built all those multi-million dollar casinos out there in Nevada. Let's go on to the next one. So we got Emiliano Grillo at $9,100. With Emiliano Grillo is another course fit guy. So if you take a look at his event history outside of last year, it's been excellent. Missed the cut, but top 10, 41st place finish, top 15 there in 2019 for that last finish. And he was also in my GPP winning lineup there from a few years ago. So a lot of good vibes. Off the tee accuracy is the name of the game for Grillo. Also one of the better approach players that we have on tour. And when you take a look at his past Palm performances, not really his shots gained metrics, he's popping Anytime we've got him on Paspalum, he's had a lot of success, and I have a theory for it. They run really slow, right? They're like 10, 10 and a half on the stimp meter. Again, during the course breakdown, I break down why that is, but it's a wide-bladed grass, so they have to run it slower. Also, they tend to be at coastal courses, which you have to combat the wind a lot of times, so they're not going to run them at like 11, 12s on the stimp meter. Grillo always succeeds at, slow greens. It's because he's a bad putter, at least historically, right? Of late, he's been a lot better putter. You take a look at his last 50 measured rounds, and it's kind of mind-boggling that he's had so much success. Is a slight gainer, 1.51 strokes gained over his last 50 measured rounds, is in fact gaining across the board. All of that is surprising to me. I mean, around the green, he's never been a specialist. With the putter, he's certainly never been a gainer. But gaining off the tee, gaining on approach, he's been a much better player of late than I think a lot of people want to give him credit for. He's got the elite course history. If you look past last year, he's got the off the tee accuracy, and he putts well on Paspalum. I literally can't find a reason not to play Grillo this week. Like, he checks every single box I'm looking for, which is kind of scary, right? Because obviously it's like, oh, this is too good to be true. And obviously in golf, it's a volatile sport, but it's a shot worth taking when he's only 11.8% owned, when a ton of people aren't getting there. So certainly somebody that I'll be investing in plenty of lineups. If you enjoy this data-based approach and want access to all of my projections and modeling, make sure to check out my Patreon page. There is a link in the description of the video. You get access to my modeling for every player, my projections ownership for every single player in the field, and of course, access to my Discord server where you can ask me questions, interact with the rest of the community, and just get some advice or throw some ideas off of like-minded individuals. So highly recommend you check it out. I also post prize picks write-ups for all the slates here on PGA, and also have a NFL channel where I do a lot of the same on that side, both for Showdown and the main slates on DraftKings. So again, if this is something that interests you, you enjoy this type of approach, I would highly recommend you check it out. But shameless plug aside, let's go ahead and get back into the programming. Getting back into it, our next core pick is going to be Russell Henley at $8,400. And Russell Henley has definitely disappointed at this event. So let's get the event history out of the way. You take a look at his starts here and you'd say, why would you even consider playing him, right? 56, so he made the cut but didn't do anything with it. Okay, missed cut. 29th, so for an $8,000 player, that's nowhere near enough for a DFS sort of format. What's the upside? Oh, well, first off, comp courses. Wildlife Country Club, my #1 comp course. He nearly won last year. He's accurate off the tee. And again, when we have a small sample size on Paspalum, he's popping, right? So again, I don't want to look into it too much, but he fits the ball striking perspective, and the recent form has been kind of sneaky too. So you take a look at the metrics here. He's gaining off the tee, gaining a bunch on approach like you'd expect, and then he's losing with the putter. But of late, the putter's been a little bit better. So when you take a look at his recent starts, he's got a 10th place, a 5th place in there, a couple missed cuts, but for the most part has been making it to the weekend. I think he's being slept on, and if the putter turns around, we're on Paspalum, so kind of similar to an Emiliano Grillo. Putters that tend to struggle, that are in a little bit of a bad form or maybe a little bit of a slump, tend to get out of it on Paspalum. And if Russell Henley can snap out of losing right around half a stroke per round on the greens, I mean, everything else is top notch. You're talking about somebody who's going to be in contention, let alone at a golf course that fits his game perfectly, kind of like a Waialae with what we have here at El Camaleon. Where just, again, accuracy off the tee is the name of the game, and then hitting greens. That's what Russell Henley can do in his sleep at this point. So another play that I just can't get off of, especially when he's only 10.5% projected owned. And the last core pick we're touching on is going to be Matt Kuchar at $8,000. Matt Kuchar, another elite course history guy. So you take a look at that at $8,000, 22nd place, 14th, also won back here in 2019. So the winner before Brendan Todd, an accuracy guy. When him and Todd won, everyone thought this was like a putting first course, which, you can get it done by hitting a bunch of putts, making a bunch of 20, 30 footers, but you've got to keep yourself in play. Both of them are also elite accuracy guys. So not a surprise when getting back there. He's had a lot of success here, and of late, he's slowly been getting it done, right? Not flashy, but gaining in 3 out of the 4 categories, and then off the tee losing, but we know he can hit fairways, right? He's going to lose because of his lack of distance, but I don't worry about that at a 7,000-yard golf course. So though he's a little bit more expensive than you'd probably like him to be there at $8,000, he's checking all the boxes, and he's only 9.8% owned. So another low-owned option that I think would be solid to get to in a lot of DFS formats. All right, fellas, that is all I've got for the DFS breakdown. Before you hop on out of here, go ahead and comment who you've got winning this week. I'm going to take Scotty Scheffler. If I had to take a little bit of outside, maybe more creative approach, let's take a million on Grillo. Again, checking all the boxes. I think it just makes too much sense this week. But go ahead and let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking as well. And until next time, best of luck with all of your lineups, any outright bets that you decide to go with. We'll have a value picks video dropping on later on this evening, and our DFS live stream will be tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So as per usual, bring any questions that you have. We'll touch on the weather. We'll go through GPP strategy, some of the chalk, all that sort of fun stuff, everything you need to know. So looking forward to it, guys. Again, best of luck, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow.